Just making sure you can hear me okay. Hey, this is Steve Stine from GuitarZoom, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm actually going to be going live on Facebook here for 3 different days talking about some things to help you with your guitar playing. And this is all in celebration of, we're releasing it's called Play Guitar for Life Ultimate Bundle. And it actually goes live on Friday, November 15th. And so if there's anything you're interested in, you're learning how to play Guitar for Life covers everything from, learning how to play chords and strumming to soloing to blues to rock soloing to theory. And it's all, what makes it so awesome is that it's broken down in a chronological order. So you're not just doing blues for a long time or not just doing theory for a long time, but you're doing little snippets of all of these different things interacting with each other as you go through the course. And that's one thing that I really love about it. But anyway, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going live for 3 different days here, trying to help you with some things. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at optimizing your chords and your strumming, trying to learn how to get better at those things to make your songs, the things that you play, sound more authentic and not only for your listener, but it feels good to you. So we're going to talk about that today. And then tomorrow what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about blues rhythm and understanding the 12-bar blues and how to play more accurate blues rhythms. And then on the next day, we're going to be doing blues soloing, the basics of blues soloing. So hopefully you'll look for me for the next couple of days here, and we're going to hang out and do some guitar playing together, okay? So just real quick, the last thing, and then we'll get started here. There's going to be a couple of links. I'm reading off my little notes here. There's going to be a couple of links in the description and the chat that you can click on to get first-in-line access to register for the webinar that's happening this Friday. And then on Friday, you're going to be able to get Play Guitar for Life on 10 DVDs in a hard case with several bonuses. So click on the links in the description to check all that kind of stuff out. And then, here it is. So tomorrow, here's the time I'll be going live. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central, I'll be going live tomorrow, and we'll be talking about blues stuff. So let's just start off by talking about chords and strumming, and I'm going to try and give you some ideas of things to make this a bit more authentic. Now, when I meet people that have just started learning how to play guitar, oftentimes they have a hard time being able to play chords and strum at the same time and try and make it sound authentic. So one of the first things that I try and teach people how to do is a technique called scratching. So we're going to start with that, and I'm going to give you some developmental ideas into your rhythm, and then we're going to add in chords, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So hopefully this will help you a little bit, okay? So hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off by just touching all 6 strings, and I'm going to get this scratching sound. I'm not pressing on the strings, I'm just touching them, and I'm getting this scratching sound. And I teach this to people to try and learn to separate your chords and your strumming as 2 separate entities to practice when you're learning how to do this sort of thing. Because like when I was first learning how to play, I was given a book. It was a Mel Bay book, and I was trying to learn how to play chords and my strumming. I couldn't strum and switch chords at the same time, and even if I did, it didn't tend to sound like organic. It just sounded like I was playing a strumming pattern and then stopping and moving, that sort of thing. And that's what I want you to avoid. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate these 2 ideas. The first thing we're going to do is we're just going to focus on strumming using the technique called scratching. And that way, I'm not worried about chords. I'm not worried about changing chords, anything like that. That's another practice element that we're going to talk about. So I'm touching the strings, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and develop maybe a strumming pattern. There's all kinds of strumming patterns we're going to learn in Play Guitar for Life, but let's just take this one. So I'm playing down, 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 up, down. Okay? So I can take that strum and I can develop it to the point where what I like to have students do is talk and play at the same time. So if they're doing this, they have to continue playing this and talk at the same time and just have a regular conversation about anything, right? So you can take your mind off the strum that you're playing and just allow your hand to move. That's what you want to try and learn how to do. So we take that strum, and what we do is we start looking at it from a realistic dynamic perspective. For instance, when I'm doing this strum, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start thinking about dynamics, how hard or soft I'm strumming. And what I do is I start trying to train myself to understand that at any point within this strumming pattern, I can strum harder or softer. Now, in order to do that, I have to take the time to practice this. It isn't just about how quickly I can play my chords or how many chords I know. It's about spending time really trying to develop an authentic sounding strum. So even though I'm just doing this strumming pattern, this down, 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 up, down, what I want to do is I want to start thinking about the dynamics, okay? Which means I need to slow down if I need to slow down the speed or the tempo at which I'm trying to play this particular example. And I want to really start exploring what it feels like to hit the strings harder and softer in different places. Now that might seem trivial to if you've done this before, but it's really important because in the long run, when it comes to guitar playing, it's not how much stuff you know, it's what it sounds like when you play. Like when people listen to you, what you're playing is what gravitates them to want to hear more of what you're doing or not, right? It isn't just, us preaching about how much we know or how smart we are or how many scales we know. It isn't that. It's that when we play, it's got to sound right. So what I'm always thinking about is adding touch or flavor to the strum that I'm playing. So I want to hit a little harder or a little softer in different places. And here's another really cool thing I want you to think about. I can hit different groups of strings. I learned this, I remember being a kid and seeing an interview with David Crosby from Crosby, Stills and Nash, and he was talking about how you can hit the top strings for like a kick drum, and you can hit the thinner strings as like a snare drum. And you can get kind of that kick and snare strum is what I've always called it. Okay, so when I'm strumming, what I can do, and I actually think of my strumming as 3 different sections on the guitar. I can strum the top, I can strum the center, or I can strum the thin strings. Now, I can combine any of those together. If I'm playing a G chord, I can strum all of them at the same time. But let's say I'm playing a D chord. Well, on a D, we generally don't want to play the top section, right? We want to play the middle section and the thinner strings together. So instead of trying to, put my pick in the exact right place on the 4th string, and then, I'm trying to just hit those 4 strings at all times, and, again, we start trying to focus on staring at our guitar like this and things like that. When a normal guitar player, any of us play, and I play this D chord, sometimes I'm supposed to hit 4 strings. Sometimes I hit less than 4. Sometimes I hit more than 4. What I don't do is hit all 6 strings all the time because it sounds terrible, okay? So I don't do that. What I am trying to do is kind of hit the middle section and then, I'll call this the bottom section toward the floor, okay? Just so we don't get confused here. So in my mind, I'm really just trying to hit those 2 sections together. Let's say I was making a G chord, and I can strum all 3 sections, the top, the middle, and the bottom here. I can strum all of it. But maybe I want to separate those like David Crosby was talking about. You see, so now all of a sudden I'm getting this kind of fatter sound of hitting those thicker strings, and then I'm moving to the thinner strings, and I'm getting a combination of those 2 things, you see? So there's lots of different ways that we can approach strumming. It isn't just learning how to play 7 strumming patterns and then those are what you use for every song. It's learning how to play what I call organically. And we go into this in Play Guitar for Life very detailed to teach you all these things, again, broken down throughout the course. But let me kind of go back to this scratching thing and show you. So now I've developed this strumming pattern. So I've got down, 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 up, down. Now, at any point, I could play a little bit more of the thicker strings or the thinner strings or something like that, and I can hit the strings harder or softer to create a dynamic, right? So there's lots of elements that I can work with here to try and make this strum sound a little more interesting. But what I like to teach people how to do is what I call organic strumming, or ocean strumming, oftentimes I refer to it as. And basically what you do is you train yourself, and this is what I want you to work on before tomorrow. I want you to train yourself to start learning how to think about your arm as moving back and forth, kind of like a maraca. It just moves the whole time. Like you don't play guitar and go, because it would look weird and it would sound terrible, right? The trick is to learn how to keep your arm moving, regardless of the style of music. If you're playing something really fast, again, it's moving back and forth. If you're playing slower, you got a little more space and you're moving that arm. But the trick is you don't stop. It's not like going from first gear to fourth gear in a car, right? You're not trying to go, because it just sounds disjointed. So what we want to do is we want to figure out kind of where we would tap our foot to a song. And again, I go into bigger detail in this, but we were listening to a song and we tap our foot, okay? And that's where we start putting the downs in. Now we can add the ups in between. And the thing I have to understand is once I develop where those downs and ups go, okay, that's basically the groove of my song. So then what I want to do is I want to start manipulating that by hitting louder or softer, right? Hitting thicker strings or thinner strings or whatever it is I'd like to do with that, okay? But the other thing here is that I want, instead of thinking about it as a strumming pattern, I want to learn how to hit and miss in different places. Now, what I teach people how to do is instead of trying to create a predestination of a strumming pattern, like down, 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 up, down. You try and shut that part of your brain off. And all you're going to do is you're going to strum down and up the whole time. And then what you're going to do is you're simply going to train yourself to move away from the strings without stopping, and then come back in when you're ready. See what I'm saying? So I'm not thinking about a particular strumming pattern. I'm just allowing myself to hit and miss the strings at different places, okay? Which is creating this natural sounding strum. And then I add all these dynamics that I'm explaining to you on top of that. I hit louder or softer in different places, or I strum more or less in different places. So let's put this in context of a song. Now I'm going to use, I don't know why I always go back to the song, but it's a song from Alice in Chains. And it's called Nutshell, and it sounds like this. See, I've got a basic idea of how I hear that song and how I hear that strum, but I'm not thinking about downs and ups and tas and TTs and all these different kinds of things like that. I'm just playing and I'm hitting the strings when I feel like it, and I'm missing when I feel like it, and I'm strumming harder when I feel like the song needs a little more energy, right? And that's how I start trying to make my strumming sound more organic. Now, again, we're going to go into greater detail, and you can click on the link wherever it is and learn more about this. But for me, as much as we get excited about soloing and all these different kinds of things on guitar, I still believe one of the most important things you can learn how to do is create an authentic sounding rhythm, or more importantly, groove, because that's what people's bodies respond to when they're listening to music. We like to hear that. And if all we're concerned with is how fast we can play a particular scale or something like that, we haven't really developed those true musical essential elements, like learning how to create a rhythm that sounds good with a singer or with a drummer, or whatever it might be, that gets a listener engaged in what we're doing. So I want you to think about that a little bit, and just understand how important it is. So, I play in all kinds of different bands and all kinds of different styles of music, and the solos are usually about 1/30th of the actual length of the song, right? The rest of the time I got to be playing rhythm. And sometimes, this is the last thing I want to give you on rhythm, and then we'll move over to chords. Sometimes your rhythms are based off this organic strumming thing, okay? The other thing I think about is that some songs need more drive, they need more push. And then I refer to this as Cro-Magnon strumming, just because it always reminds me of like just, running around with a club and, beating people over the head. So what happens here is instead of getting this nice, smooth, organic strum, we're not looking for that. What we're looking for is this. So what's happening there is I still have downs and ups. The ups will always be available in between the downs. They're just going to get harder to play because the speeds get faster. So with a song like that, instead of going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, I want to push the song. I want to drive the song more. So I want those downs to be the primary focus. And this is where that kind of Cro-Magnon thing comes in, is it's meant to be raw. It's meant to be aggressive because it gives it this raw energy and kind of propulsion forward. You see, so it's a different kind of thing, where if I was playing it like this, it smooths it out again. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. You can do anything you want. I'm just saying those are two different kinds of approaches that I use when I play rhythms, whether they're, strumming to chords or single note things or stuff like that. I think about this all the time. Some songs might even use both of those kinds of strums, different places within the context of the song. But those are all kinds of different things for you to think about a little bit in your practice, whether or not you are interested in Play Guitar for Life or not. It's definitely something I want you to think about in your daily routine and see if you can develop that a little bit more. Now, when it comes to chords, what I want you to be thinking about, whether you're learning how to play open chords or whether you're learning how to play bar chords or power chords or whatever it is that you are interested in or you're learning, all of those things we talk about in the guitar course. But no matter what it is that you're learning how to play, the most important thing is that you find a comfortable way of being able to move between those chords and you don't stop strumming. Like the biggest thing that I did wrong when I first started learning how to play is I would develop a strumming pattern, which is why I'm careful with strumming. I certainly teach strumming patterns, but I try and get people to understand organic strumming, because then you're not locked into like every song having the exact same strumming pattern all the time, because then everything kind of sounds the same. So the trick is once you develop whatever strumming you're doing, the strum is perpetual. It keeps going. And then what you need to do is train yourself to be able to move chords. But I didn't do that. What I did was I learned how to play like I'd go from G to D. So I'd go. And I had to stop in between to switch. And that's because I hadn't developed both of my hands independently to really make this thing work. Because if you think about it, if you can learn to strum and you can learn a chord independently and you can put those two things together, you can play how many tens of hundreds of thousands of songs, right? I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff out there you could play, but it requires you to have chord knowledge. And equally as important is not just how many chords you know, but being able to move them comfortably back and forth and then be able to create a groove over the top that keeps going. While this hand is switching, this strum just keeps going. So what I like to teach people about, there's a couple of different things. Number one is a technique called bouncing. And basically what bouncing is you take a chord that you're learning how to play. Let's say we're learning how to play a D chord. Okay, so I've made this D chord, and again, it could be any chord that you're learning how to play, but I'm just using D as an example. So what I need to do is I need to train my hand with muscle memory. I need to make this shape to the point where when I go to make this chord, my hand automatically goes up and makes that shape. Okay, I don't want to get to the guitar and then try and figure out how to make that chord or develop that chord while I'm at the guitar, because the song's playing and I'm still developing the movement of that chord while the song is playing, which means I'm going to be late every time. So what I need to do is train my hand through muscle memory to make these chords. So what bouncing is you make the chord, let's say it's D for instance, and what you want to do is you want to train yourself to keep that chord shape. Okay, think of it as your fingers being kind of super glued or stuck in this position. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick your hand up and then you're going to set it back down. And you're going to pick it up and then you're going to set it back down. Okay, now again, don't turn this into a practice of a practice of a practice. It's not that it has to be fast. You don't have to sit and do this as fast as humanly possible. It's not that. What's most important is when you're in the air. What's most important is when your hand comes off the guitar, being able to maintain that shape, because that's what you're training your hand to do. So I always teach three things. Number one, you have to visualize. If you can see it, you can play it. Doesn't mean you can play it fast, but you can play it. If I ask you to play me a B flat 9, flat 13, and you don't know what that means, you can't play it, right? But if I ask you to play me an A chord, if you know what that is, you can play it. Again, it might not be fast, but you can play it. So visualization. Okay? That's the first thing. And the second thing is bouncing, learning how to bounce. Once you can visualize it, you practice your bouncing of that chord. Okay, over and over and over. So I make that chord, I lift it up, and I set it back down. Because my ultimate goal here is if I was starting from nothing, and I want to make that chord, as I lift my hand to make the chord, I want to make the chord, so all I have to do then is set it down. I don't have to wait till I get the guitar and then formulate the chord. I've already formulated the chord, I just need to set it down. Which, if you think about it, leads to the third thing, which is lifting and shifting, which is practicing two different chords, like D, for instance. There's D. And let's say I was practicing bouncing A. Okay, my song uses D and A, those two chords. So I've got A, I'm practicing over and over and over. I've got D, I'm practicing over and over and over. And again, I know I'm doing this kind of quick. I'm just for lack of wasting your time. Okay, but I would do those each slowly. And then what I do is I start practicing moving back and forth between them. I'm lifting the chord and shifting to the next shape. So I lift it up, make the next shape, and set it down. I lift it up, make the shape, set it down. And that should happen pretty much seamlessly. As I lift up, I reshape, and then set it down. I lift and shift. Now, if I find in my practice of that as I'm shifting to the next chord, whatever that chord is, it's not working very well. It's slowing me down. I have to think too hard. I'm, not going to the right fret or the right strings. What does that tell us? Well, that tells us that chord, that one chord, we need to bounce it more. We need to get more comfortable with that chord before we ever worry about lifting and shifting between 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 chords, right? We have to independently build each chord. Now, some chords like A are usually pretty easy. But some chords like B minor, for instance, like a bar chord or something, sometimes those require more time for people. It just depends on what... The most important thing for me, or from me to you, is I want you to start becoming aware of the things that are slowing you down. Okay, that's really important. I want you to certainly be aware of the things that you're good at or the things that are coming along that are, exciting you and motivating you. That's really important. But I also want you to be aware of the things that are slowing you down, because the one thing I hear a lot is people go, I gave up guitar because I couldn't do whatever, or my fingers were too big or too small, or, whatever these things are. And I don't want you to feel that way. I never want you to feel like, oh, I suck, I can't do this. It's not that. It's learning to isolate what the problem is, and sometimes that takes time. I mean, the more you practice and the more you learn, the more you get used to this. But sometimes it's just something that's getting in the way that slows you down. And so let's say you were trying to play a song that uses D, A, and G was the problem, right? G is the one that's giving you a problem. Well, you need to shut everything down and just take that G out and just practice that, because G isn't going anywhere. I mean, if you play guitar for the rest of your life, you're going to play that G chord 85 billion times, right? So developing it is important. And sometimes we can say, well, the things will just keep developing as we keep practicing. That is true. But if we don't learn to pinpoint where the problems are and extract those problems and then deal with them, develop them, and then stick them back into the equation, we can optimize our practice so much more by doing that. That's why I want you to practice strumming separately from your chording. And as these two things start working better, they're going to come together and they're going to work, okay? So, again, tomorrow... let me double check here, the light is on my notes here. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central, I'll be going live again. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about blues, the basics of blues rhythm. We're going to talk about that. And then remember that there are some links around here. I don't know where they are, but there's links somewhere around here that you can check out. Plays Guitar for Life Ultimate Bundle. And that launches on Friday, November 15th. Okay, so if this is something you think might be beneficial for you, go ahead and check it out and see if it's something that would work for you. And if it doesn't, that's cool too. Just keep learning and staying positive and staying motivated. That's really important. All right, so thank you everybody for being with me today. And then remember, tomorrow we're going to talk about blues rhythm basics. And then the next day we're going to be talking about the basics of blues soloing. Okay, so take care, and I'll talk to you soon.